Hello, this is Audrie Gordon and welcome to day 10 of the 25 days of co-pilots. Today we're going to talk about getting those creative juices flowing with AI Builder GPT models. So a few days back, I showed you how to get to the AI Builder GPT models when I did an overview of your options for Power Apps. Today we're going to jump right into an application made with Power Apps to see how we can use these GPT prompts. Now remember, you can view all of these under, when you do more, then go to AI Hub, and then from AI Hub, you can go into the AI prompts, and from there, by clicking on any one of them, you can review what each one of them does. This also will give you the opportunity to test to see if you have the appropriate credits for using this. This is not available on a trial basis, so you'll need to have a Power Apps Premium license or a Power Automate Premium license to use these GPT-powered models. So what I want to show you today is how to use them inside Power Apps and Power Automate. And then tomorrow, we're going to get super creative and we're going to do some custom prompts together. And I'm going to show you some scenarios where custom prompts can be awesome to use. All right, but today we're going to take it easy and we're just going to find out how do we leverage these, because they show up slightly different than what you see here in Power Apps and Power Automate. So here what I have in Power Apps is I have made an app in advance just to save time. Now, just to tell you how I set this app up, first of all, I just made a new app and then I inserted a screen. So I inserted a new screen right here and I chose the split screen. I could have chosen sidebar. Either one would work fine for this. Then what I did was put into that container, I added a header control. That's a modern control. I added into this sidebar container. So I did choose sidebar, excuse me. I added a label, which would just give me a place to give instructions. I added a text input that people can type into or paste into. I added all these buttons, and I wasn't a good maker in renaming them really nice. I would suggest you do that. So maybe so this button should be called BT button generate text. But I didn't do all that housekeeping just for this demonstration. I added 6 buttons, and then over here on the right, I added another text input, and this one I set as view only. So they're both multi-line text inputs, but this one on the left is edit, and this one on the right is view only. I configured each of these buttons. So step 1, whenever you want to use a AI Builder model in your app, you want to add data, and you'll notice all the AI Builder models are together. And if you do see all, you'll see them all. Now you may see some custom ones that I have made. You may see some custom ones that your company has made, but I'm going to just use these out of the box ones here for the sake of this demo. And so I just took a minute and added each one of them to my data. So they kind of act like non-tabular connectors in that you just add them. Now, as far as using them, if you look at the generate text here and you go to on select, I use the exact same formula for each one, basically just changing the pivot point. All right. So in this button, we're trying to create text with GPT. And so I used the same formula. I said, set my response. Now I decided that my response is where the GPT response is going to live. Okay. And then here's the name of the GPT model as it shows up here in Power Apps. And then they're all followed with .predict. And then they want to know out of the box, where is the text that I'm evaluating? Where is the prompt, right? And I put the prompt in text input canvas 1, and you just have to indicate you want the value. And I think the value means that I chose the modern control. Okay, so I did the exact same thing for each button. So if we go to the on select of the second button, you'll see it looks exactly the same, except it's a different model. And again here, it's exactly the same, except it uses a different model. And you'll notice they're named a little differently than you saw in the hub, okay? Closer to their API equivalents. Now, what's interesting is I will give you this app, so you will have this on the community page that summarizes this series. So at aka.ms/25 days of copilots, no spaces, that's where you'll find the download that you can download this app yourself. Now, in order for it to work, though, you're going to have to check your connections and make sure you have your connection first, and you're going to have to make sure that you have the premium license, because you can see these are all premium license. Okay, now if that is true, what's going to happen is over here is where I'm going to actually, in this text input, I'm going to put the response. And that is how easy this is to do. That's it. There's no other stuff to do. So if I play this app, and I'm just going to maybe start from the bottom, classify. Now let's show you, because that is the hardest one, maybe for some of you. It's not hard, but it has a little bit of a parameter requirement. So let's look at this one. It is different than the others because it has a second parameter. So if you're ever wondering what does the expression need for the GPT model to work, just look up above and it will show you. Okay, so here it needs the input text like all the rest, but it needs something that the rest didn't have, right? And that is the requirement for input categories. And that is one single string of categories, not each one as a category, okay? So I have these classifications as religion, technology, political, beauty, and unknown. And they're in one long string with commas separating. That, even though it's not hard at all, is the slightly different complexity of that. Now tomorrow when we make our own prompts, we're going to see that happen again, because once we define additional dynamic values that our prompt needs, then we'll have to make sure we surface those in Power Apps and Power Automate. Okay, so let's do a little try of this. So I'm just going to paste an article that I have over here that's about how to stay young and beautiful. And so I just pasted that into the area here. And now I'll click classify text. And you'll see that that turns out being of the category beautiful. So good. Let's take something different. I'll show you this scenario towards the end of the 25 days. Is a little article about the Bible person Abraham. Okay, let's classify this. Okay, that classifies as religion. So you can see that it's successfully classifying these different texts. Okay, and that was the hardest thing. So let's do something easier. Let's say draft a list of interview questions for a new Power Apps developer candidate. The list of, I'm going to just put a number here. 10 interview questions I may use for a new Power Apps developer candidate. All right, and now I'm actually asking it to generate text. So boom, we will click generate text, And there we are. We have our 10 questions. And take a peek at those questions. Can you answer them? So these are 10 questions. Now we could also add to this and kind of put more detail at the back of this. So for instance, we could say this candidate is going for a role that will create Power Apps component framework, Power Apps components for our company. Now let's see if it changes the questions. So it starts to go into development, and then it includes things about PCF components and what they should possibly know, right? So really awesome. And imagine giving your users an app like this. So let me give you a scenario where this might be helpful. I'll give you a scenario for each one. Let's say you have a requirement that if you're going to apply to do an event with your company, right? So you have a possibility for partners to apply to do an event at your company. They must always have an abstract, right? That explains what their event is all about. Well, people have a hard time writing abstracts. Why not include a co-pilot in your application for submitting to speak at an event, and then have the co-pilot there to help them build their abstract? That's just an idea. The other thing I like is summarize text. And let's take that Bible story again. And yes, I could have cleared the text and all that stuff, but again, I didn't do a lot of housework here. So I put that story about Abraham in there, and then I click summarize text. Now remember, I'm using the default APIs for this. There's no extra anything in there. They're all default. And we took this fairly long story and we turned it into a single paragraph about Abraham. So summarize text is also great in your apps if you're giving your users probably some information, and you can have a co-pilot in your app that picks up the documentation on a particular point. Like think of something more complex like OSHA requirements or environmental protection requirements or wildlife protection requirements. And that document that you just served up in your app, because it's relevant, it's really long. You could give them a co-pilot that defaults to having the text in that document available, and then they can just press summarize text to get the essentials. So that's maybe a working case for that. We will talk about Power Automate because summarize text is great for Power Automate as well. Okay, extract actions. Let's go back to that Stay Young and Beautiful article, and let's try that here. So it's looking for action items as opposed to a summary of the text, right? So we'll just let that run for a minute. I do notice that extract does take a little longer. It does end up with JSON format, and in this case it has the key elements of what you need to worry about. Stop smoking, keep yourself active, avoid stress, get a good night's rest, so these are the different things that'll keep you young. All right, let's try responding to a complaint. Okay, so dear company, I am appalled at how poor your service desk performs. I was unable, after 4 hours of conversation and troubleshooting, to solve my home security problem. Please refund me for the month of December. Okay. Thank you, me. Okay, so let's do a response to the complaint. Now, this one will actually type an email in response to this complaint. And it's going to build that email almost instantly. It says, thank you for reaching out. We apologize. To assist you further, we need some details. We understand your frustration. I'll look into this refund for the month. And then bam, 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 right? I can think of 1,000 reasons to use this. This might even be used after you do sentiment analysis on an NPS report or something, where you, after you do the sentiment analysis, you decide to respond to anything negative, for instance, right? So we can do sentiment analysis on this as well. And as you can see, it's clearly negative, okay? But imagine you had a whole bunch of comments from a survey, right? You could just dig out the ones that are negative and then follow up with the response to complaint. Now, this brings me to how this works in Power Automate. So in Power Automate, you can use any trigger. Like I'm using a trigger for Viva Engage. So basically, I'm looking for any negative post to my followed feed. And so I can use any of these. And again, they look a little bit different sometimes in Power Automate, but you can see that they mean the same thing. So, and I'm just going to go back here so you can see it starts out with AI Builder like lined up here with only a couple showing just to keep it brief. But if you do see more, you'll see them all. Okay, so I'm going to do see more. And then from that, I want to detect whether it's a positive or negative sentiment. So I should be able to find sentiment analysis here. And it's called Analyze Positive or Negative Sentiment. And this is going to be in English. And the text is going to come from the trigger. Okay, so what's nice about using these in Power Automate is they can be triggered by something, an email, a post in Teams, a post in Viva Engage, even an update to a database, right? Or a SharePoint list or Dataverse. So you can decide what triggers this. Another common use that I could think of is, how about whenever something is posted on X, formerly Twitter, you analyze it for sentiment, and therefore you want to escalate anything negative to a particular team. So you can do that. So, and you can, after you've decided it's negative, you can always add a condition here. If it's negative, then you can do the generate a reply to that complaint, and then have someone approve that, and then off you go. You already have that finished. So slightly different experience in Power Automate, but the value in Power Automate is now you can dynamically use these models based on an event that happened or even something that you schedule. Another one I think might be a great idea is, let's suppose you get newsletters from someone once a month or once a week. These newsletters can be kind of long, right? So therefore you could have the triggers when I receive an email with the subject line of the newsletter, and then have it summarize the newsletter. These kind of things are extremely valuable in a business setting. Just remember, when you're automating at this scale, be careful to remember to monitor what the GPT-powered model is doing and not allow it to act independently of humans. All right, so that is it for day 10. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about how to create our own custom prompts and how not to use the default, but make our own GPT models for prompting. And don't worry, there'll be plenty of time in the series where we will have like a full session on Power Automate and a full session on Power Apps. So that's going to be it for day 10. And I hope that got you thinking about how you can get your creative juices flowing with AI Builder GPT models inside of your Power Apps applications. Thank you and happy holidays.